What's up, motherfuckers, and welcome back to the Zombie Bible, the series in which I go over every single zombies map from beginning to end and rate them based on certain criteria to see if they're good or not. Today, we will be going over the swampy nightmare that is Numa. Numa was the second DLC map to be introduced in Call of Duty World at War. It introduced the Wunderwaffe, as well as, of course, who could forget, Tank Dempsey, Nikolai, Takio, and of course, Richtofen. These characters we would play as throughout the entirety of the rest of World at War and Black Ops 1. Probably the most iconic set of characters Zombies has ever had. But without further ado, let's get straight into Numa. Now, starting off, we have the atmosphere, the vibe, the aesthetic, if you will, of the map. And previous to this, we had maps like Nocturne Toten and Verrückt. These were maps that were relatively creepy in their own right. Nocturne Toten taking place in a broken down bunker at night, and Verrückt taking place in a really decrepit, insane asylum. In my episodes about those two maps prior, I did talk about how much I really did like the atmospheres of those maps and how they really set up that creepy vibe that is really effective when you're dealing with a zombie mode. However, for Numa, I'm not going to lie when I say I'm not really a huge fan of the atmosphere of this map. Now, when it comes to Numa, the atmosphere here is honestly incredibly dull, especially when in comparison to the previous maps that we had already discussed. There's not really any pop of color. The atmosphere is very dull, kind of boring. It takes kind of a toll on the eyes after a while because you're just kind of looking at the same meh on your screen consistently. Now, it's not like I'm hating on the atmosphere being necessarily in a swamp, because the swamp aesthetic can be done well. This is something that Treyarch would revisit and perfect in a map like Zetsubo, or hell, even the Numa version of Black Ops 3 is way, way better than what we got here. There's just not much here to look at. The only thing that can make this map seem even a little bit kind of creepy is maybe the fog. But given the other aspects of the atmosphere of this map, it doesn't really help much. Using fog as an atmospheric kind of, making the map creepier is executed much better, again, in later maps, in a map like, as controversial as it is, Transit. The atmosphere of Numa, I'm actually going to be giving a 69, which we are already starting this video off as a banger. I have no idea if this is a hot take or not, but I just don't really enjoy the atmosphere of this map. It is incredibly dull and boring. Again, like I said, especially when you take into comparison Zetsubo or the Black Ops 3 version of Numa. Next, we're going to be talking about the layout of Numa, and my thoughts and opinions on the layout of Numa can be described using a single phrase. I mean, it's fine, I guess. It's alright. Now, the layout of this map is essentially a central hub with 4 individual branches coming off of that. And again, this is fine, but it's kind of lazy. Like, there aren't really any shortcuts in this map. And again, Numa is a World at War map, so it's not like a huge map at all. It's kind of easy to get to point A to point B by default. But when you compare it to a layout like Nocturne Toten, which has more, intertwining paths and, multiple ways to get to the same spot, when you compare that, it's just not as good. And yes, Numa does have a singular shortcut, the zip line, but we will get into that later when we talk about map mechanics. And my biggest gripe with this map design is because, the hub is where it's at. For the most part, that the hub has the most spacing. The main hut is kind of the best place to survive at anyway, because the four individual branches kind of have, like, the mud and all that stuff. There's no really way to train over there or anything. The only reason you're going to the branches is to grab a perk, or maybe if the mystery box moves over there. That's really the only purpose that those four branches serve. Other than that, you're never going to them. You're staying put in the central hub. Now, I would be remiss if I did not talk about, though, the fact that Numa, in comparison to Nocturne Toten and Verrückt, does have much better spacing in comparison. Numa actually gives us pretty much our first official training spot, that being the area by the Flogger. This is the first area, at least to my knowledge, that was kind of considered the main spot. Kind of, usually maps kind of have the spot that people kind of go to train, and it's kind of, like Kino has the stage, Ascension has, the Lunar Lander by PhD, that kind of stuff. And the Flogger area does serve as a really good training spot. And in general, the spacing, at least in, the main hut, is actually really well done. Besides that, though, besides the main hut and the Flogger area, in general, again, when it comes to the branches here, it leaves a lot to be desired. Most of the branches are covered up with the swamp water that will slow you down when you step in it. Again, they really only serve to be a place for the perks to be. The layout here, I'm going to be giving a 73. Again, because it's just, I'm not really a fan of a hub with multiple branches, and even then, I feel like it can kind of be done better than this. Overall, though, in terms of spacing, it is a huge step up from Nacht and Verrückt. Next, what we're going to be talking about is the flow and the pacing. Now, while I am not a huge fan of the layout of this map in general, like most other World at War maps, the flow and the pacing is actually pretty good. Again, because the maps are on the smaller side by default, it is going to feel a lot better to just play the map, to open up the map, get around in general. The only thing that really slows you down in this map is the swamp water, which, again, we'll get into later when it comes to the map mechanics. Overall, I will give the flow and pacing here an 85. It's nothing too crazy, but that's not bad. Next, we will be talking about map mechanics. Now, there are multiple mechanics that were introduced in this map, some specific to Numa. The first thing we'll be talking about is the traps in this map. Now, obviously, the star attraction here is the Flogger. The Flogger is an awesome trap. This thing is one of the most satisfying traps to use ever in COD Zombies. And it is just so fun to, turn on and watch that thing just fucking rip through zombies and make them fly around and stuff. It's great. And it's especially more great and especially very useful, the Flogger, because it's right next to the main training area of the map. Well, really the only training area of the map. So because of that, it's extremely useful. And if the Flogger were the only trap in Numa, this map would get a much high... It would be perfection. However, that is not the only trap that is in this map. Of course, the electric traps are back. And I gotta be real with you, the electric traps in this map are borderline useless. The electric traps are situated at the entrance of each individual hut on the individual 4 branches. And to me, that's not really useful, especially in comparison to the Flogger. Now, when I talked about Verrückt, I did talk about the fact that I think that the double tap side electric trap is a lot more useful than the speed cola side electric trap. However, I think depending on how you're playing, you can make the speed cola side electric trap work for you. When it comes to Numa, though, the way that the electric traps are placed, I mean, ask yourself, how many times have you personally used the electric traps on this map? It's probably not very much, and there's a reason for that. On top of the fact that you're not really going to the 4 individual branches that much, except for going to get a perk or go to the mystery box, depending on where it moves for you. Because even if you do use the electric traps in this map, it'll just trap you in the hut. And then you'll just have to survive in the hut. And this isn't like Vorukt where, you know, on Double Tap's side, you got one barricade that you need to worry about. On top of the huts already being kind of small and tight, there are, well, depending on which cabin, obviously, there are multiple barricades in multiple places you need to look out for while the electric trap is running. And why would you do that to yourself? Why would you go out of the way to use a trap that is just going to trap you in the hut? And I don't really know if anybody would ever really use the trap coming out of the hut, because like the point of a trap, especially like an electric trap, is more to use in like later rounds when, you know, you need an extra hand to help you get down the hordes as you progress. And there's not really a way to like train your whole horde through the fucking hut and out to use that electric trap. It's just out of the way and just not really convenient. So again, while the Flogger is an amazing trap, the electric traps in this map are just, again, borderline useless. Now the next mechanic that was introduced in this map is the box light. The light that shines up from the box to let you know where it is. This is a great mechanic. I love this mechanic, and they have implemented it in every map since. And it's a really great mechanic. It's just basically a beacon telling you, hey, once the box has moved, this is where it's at now. Because, you know, obviously you're going to want to use the mystery box more if you're not set up all the way, or you want to get a wonder weapon, whatever. The next thing we will talk about is the zip line. Now, much like the electric traps in this map, the zip line is also borderline useless. The only shortcut in this entire map costs 1,500 points to use. And it takes you like 10 feet. The zip line is settled between the doctor quarters and the main hut. And I've barely ever used this thing because, again, I'm not going out of my way to leave the main hut very often. Like I said, usually just for a perk or to hit the mystery box. That's the only time I'm leaving the main hut. On top of that, why the fuck would I pay 1,500 points to go 10 feet when I can get there on foot in like 10 seconds? I mean, it's a cool idea. It's a cool novelty. And I feel like it would be much more useful if it just costed a little less. I really do feel like 1,500 is a lot for such a shortcut. Next is the swamp water, the mud, the muck, whatever you want to call it. And I'm kind of conflicted when it comes to this because I'm not really necessarily a hater of it, but I don't love it. And I feel like any time you slow the player down, the player is never really going to like it very much, because this is an idea and a mechanic they brought back in Origins much later in Black Ops 2. And I mean, honestly, I feel like it's better executed in Black Ops 2 than it is here a little bit. For the most part, when in Numa, though, it is pretty avoidable. There really aren't many areas in the map that force you to go into the swamp water, the muck. There's really not that many areas, but there are a couple. But for the most part, it's avoidable, so it's not that big of a deal breaker. But again, I don't know. I feel conflicted about this kind of mechanic, but it's not make or break. And then the last thing that we will be talking about that they introduced in this map is perk randomization, meaning every time that you go to a separate branch of the map and you open up the hut in that area, you will get a random perk. The perk is decided for you by the gods. And again, this is a mechanic I'm kind of conflicted on because I don't love it, don't hate it. I feel like it can be done well. I feel like in Shino Numa, honestly, it really kind of feels like the perk randomization really only serves as a purpose for you to want to open up the whole map. Because if you didn't have to open up the whole map, why would you? Again, going back to the layout conversation from earlier, there's nothing in these branches. There's nothing that's really gonna make you go there. Like if all the perks were in a set spot, chances are you would just go to the whatever branch Jug was at, get Jug, and then never open a branch until the mystery box moved. So I feel like Treyarch implemented this to get you to have to open up the whole map, which to me feels a little lazy. Now again, I'm not hating on the mechanic itself, but it does feel implemented in that way because this is a idea that I think they only brought back to my memory that they only brought back in Nuketown Zombies, and really I feel like it's executed better in Nuketown Zombies than it is here. But overall, the map mechanics of this map is getting a nice, solid, rounded 60. Because I feel like, obviously, everything that was carried over from Rook, like the perks, the ray gun, all that jazz, is great. But a lot of the mechanics that are specific to Shino Numa that were introduced, most of them never got brought back. And there's a reason for that. And again, outside of the flogger, there really isn't any mechanic here that like I really love or would die for. Next we have boss zombies. Now Shino Numa introduced the infamous Hellhound round, and this is a fucking great boss zombie. I mean, it gives you an auto max ammo. You kind of know when a Hellhound round is in a map that you will be getting a max ammo at some point. You can hang in there, and the dogs themselves aren't that difficult to kill. Now, granted, would they be better if they were a little more challenging? Yeah. I mean, in World at War and Black Ops specifically, the Hellhounds are basically like, once you get the novelty of it, it's pretty easy to defend yourself against. You just kind of stay put, and they're easy to kill, so you just kill them. I'm giving the boss zombies here a 91 because, again, the Hellhounds being a max ammo round is a great bone to be thrown. But the reason that the dogs aren't higher rated is just, again, you kind of wish they were a little more difficult as times went on. You kind of wish they were a little more challenging, but that's about it. Next, we have the Wonder Weapon, and we will not be talking about the ray gun this time because the ray gun wasn't the main Wonder Weapon of Shino Numa. The main Wonder Weapon of Shino Numa was, of course, the Wunderwaffe DG-2. And I will say and mention that from this point forward, when it comes to the Wonder Weapons category, I will not be taking the ray gun into account anymore. Because at this point, the ray gun is just kind of a part of zombies now. That would be like going over like the Perca-Colas like every single map I review. That is completely redundant because it's in every map. When we get to a map like Ascension, yeah, I'll talk about, PhD and stamina being added. But like when it comes to old mechanics or old things that were introduced, just continuing on, I don't feel the need to talk about that every single time. So I'm not going to be talking about the ray gun being one of the wonder weapons from this point forward. Now, the Wunderwaffe is a really, really fun wonder weapon to use. It's awesome. And, obviously with hindsight, we have gotten better and better wonder weapons as time has gone on with zombies. But when it comes to back in the day when you just had the Wunderwaffe, it was really fun to use. And a wonder weapon is always going to be a welcome addition to a zombies map. Maybe except for Black Ops 3 because you have double pack-a-punch, but we'll talk about that when we get to Black Ops 3. By default, wonder weapons are going to kind of always get a higher score just because they're usually always helpful. So, given the how iconic the Wunderwaffe is and how fun it was to use and just how great it was, I will be giving the Wunderwaffe a 93. I think, especially when it comes to Numa, again, a map that is generally kind of more bare bones. I feel like we really didn't get out of this until we hit Doris, where the Pack-a-Punch was introduced. But this is just a very welcome addition to zombies because the rounds get higher, you might need a little help. Next, we have replay value. And when it comes to the replay value of Numa, I gotta be honest when I say I don't really play this map that often. And more times than not, I'm probably booting up Noct or Verrückt over this map. Numa kind of, to me, feels like a weird middle child because it was kind of forgotten between Verrückt and Doris. Because this map is essentially like a better Verrückt, meaning there's more space and, it's a lot easier to survive in this map in comparison to Verrückt, but it has a lot of the same core mechanics and qualities. It has the same 4 perks. It has the ray gun again with the addition of the Wunderwaffe, but the Wunderwaffe itself isn't enough to get you to come back to this map because the Wunderwaffe is also in Doris, and in Doris, you can pack-a-punch it. So, there's nothing really particularly that will get you to come back to Numa. Again, especially because it's not really great to look at. The amount of times I have played Numa and gotten to round like 20 and just decided, nah, I've had enough. Just because, again, the atmosphere, the color palette of this map just gets really hard on your eyes after a while. You get really bored of this map after a while when it comes to that. And again, when it comes to the map mechanics specific to Numa, they're not great. I mean, the Flogger is phenomenal. I'd give the Flogger on its own like a 99. But the rest of the mechanics in this map just aren't anything to write home to. And things like perk randomization and, swamp water slowing you down sure as hell ain't going to get you to want to replay it. In general, though, I will give the replay value a 79 here, just to be fair. Because while I don't really necessarily like Numa that much, I can understand why people would. So I'll throw you a bone with a 79. Is that fair? Lastly, we have the fun and enjoyment of Numa. Obviously, throughout this video talking about Numa, you have probably picked up on the fact that I'm not really that huge of a Numa fan. And not very often do I come back to Numa. Like, as a matter of fact, making this video is probably the first time I've gone back to playing Numa in like maybe 5 years. It's been a while. I don't go to Numa that often. Like I said, I came back to it for this video, and like sometimes I'll do a zombies marathon where I'll go from Nocturne and Totem all the way up to like the current zombies map, and then I have to play Numa by like default. But again, Numa, it just gets kind of boring after a while, especially because in the same game, like, Noct serves a purpose. It's like, this map is bare bones, it's challenging, and you just kind of want to see how long you can fuck around and survive. Verrückt is not as bare bones, but it's harder because of the map layout. And again, kind of serves a purpose of, let's see how long you can kind of survive in this really challenging map. On top of Verrückt's phenomenal atmosphere, Numa doesn't have a lot going for it, especially when Doris was the map after this. Doris is probably one of the most replayed maps in World at War and is, in a lot of people's eyes, held in very high regard when it comes to zombies maps. So, again, Numa basically has everything that Doris would eventually have, just without Pack-a-Punch. And if you wanted to play bare bones, just go play Noct. If you want to have, the genuine zombies experience with Pack-a-Punch and everything, play Doris. So, because Numa doesn't really have a lot going for it, at least in my eyes, and when I do play this map, I mean, it's okay. Like, I don't really love it. I don't hate it. So I'll give it a 70. It's fine. So overall, Numa has earned a score of 77.5, which is our very first C+. Now, the map got a C+, okay? It got a high 70 score. It does feel like I've shit on this map a lot in this video, and that's because I feel like I'm very disappointed in this map, especially when it comes to, I feel like, how good it could be. Especially when you play a map like Zetsubo, which kind of has the same influence of that swampy atmosphere behind it. And especially after you play the Chronicles version of Numa, you kind of come back to the original Numa and are just like, man, I wish it was just like the Chronicles version originally. Not graphically, obviously, because that wasn't possible. The Chronicles Numa has a lot more vibrancy behind it, which is something I wish they would have done in the original. But overall, Numa serves as a really good stepping stone in the whole scope of zombies because, again, it did introduce the main cast, which would be used from that point until the end of Black Ops 1 and then brought back at the end of Black Ops 2. As well as introducing the Wunderwaffe. Probably, besides the ray gun, probably one of the most iconic and recognizable wonder weapons in zombies history. So yeah, that is it. That is the episode on Numa. And next episode we'll be talking about, of course, Doris. That will be an exciting episode because Doris is, again, very beloved by the community. And we will see how it holds up and how good it actually is. So this has been me. This has been the Zombie Bible. And until next time, deuces.